Hey, everybody. I'm glad we're here and you're sitting with myself and actually Maggie, I've known Maggie for several years now because she was my yoga student. That's how her and I met. She went through yoga teacher training and I was the facilitator at the time, but she, even in the training, was like incredibly smart, very like wanted specifics, was very, you could tell had a very corporate background, which again, it's like it kind of YTT and that kind of brings all kinds of people together and it's really fun to see how people interact. So she was kind of this perfect guest to really talk about this, what I would like to call like an epidemic of women hitting burnout. And we want to talk about burnout very differently today and talk about a lot of the things that aren't being talked about on other podcasts. And I was like, oh, Maggie, let's chat. So thank you so much, Maggie Ledbetter, for being here.
Thank you, Shalane Carter, for having me here. Always fun to chat with you.
I know it's one of those things, some people come into your life for, like, what do they say, like a reason, a season, or a lifetime or something like that.
Mhm.
And I feel like you and I have circled in each other's lives. We're never doing the exact same thing, but there's been a lot of parallels and a lot of things where you and I have, again, kind of run side by side in some different things, whether it's building businesses, yoga, that type of thing. So what I find fascinating about Maggie is Maggie, and you might be able to, again, elaborate a little bit more on this, but Maggie, like so many of us, was like chasing the corporate ladder, like bought into like the boss babe. She was making, six figures at this corporate sales and marketing job for years and years and years. And when she even came to YTT, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was kind of this beginning of this shift for you, correct?
100%. Yeah, I came into yoga teacher training, I would say somewhere in between on the cusp of a transition and in the midst of a transition because it was actually within the YTT program that I took a step back from my corporate sales and marketing job, or at least the sales part of that, and took a I guess I don't wanna say like a backseat to my career because I was still very much in the career mindset, but took a lower stress role in the consulting space. So, yeah, very much YTT was kind of like the catalyst and the
Yeah.
container all in one.
Yeah, like open the door. And sometimes you need some of those things. I think something that I kind of made note of, or that I've seen so many times, is I feel like when women specifically feel this way of my life isn't working like this anymore, they often turn to body things. They turn to all of a sudden there's a new interest in their health. They're starting to take yoga classes or, go through a certification. You see this with Pilates as well. There's like a
Mhm.
turn to a lot more wellness. And you did that as well. Maggie then moved into actually teaching yoga and led teacher trainings, workshops, all that jazz in that yoga and wellness space, which she's kind of moved into now at this point, helping women bridge that transition of like, this doesn't work for me anymore, but like, what comes next? And so I'm like, I want to actually talk about, or like kind of start with, what are some of the things from the face. So for the woman who's listening right now, that's kind of like in where you were at the start of YTT, of like, hey, I don't think this is quite working like I thought it was going to work anymore. This doesn't feel good. Looking back at that time period, what would have you done differently if you know what you know now?
I would have, I guess, changed directions sooner, if that makes sense. Like, I spent 10 years in that corporate role and was busting my ass, climbing up the ladder as fast and as hard as I could. And ultimately, it came down to I was manifesting other people's intentions for me. I
Mm.
was living out a story, living out a narrative, living out a life that it was something of a script that had almost been handed to me as though maybe not from birth, but perhaps from kindergarten, where it's, your job is to get good grades so that you can get into a good college, so that you can get a high paying job at a well respected company. And it was just like that was the script. That was the
There's
script
the
of my life.
pipeline.
Exactly, that was the pipeline, and that was the narrative that, you know, n for not for bad intentions or for any wrong reasons, but from a place of, what truly wanting the best for me, parents and other family, and then later on friends and colleagues and just society at large had, like I said, handed me this script. And it was like, okay, well, this is the step I take. And then because of that, this is the next step I take. And it just followed this natural progression. And I kind of just quickly want to go back to what you said about the body, because I think that is what's so interesting is like for so many years, like I said, I was in this corporate world for 10, but it was probably 4 to 5 years within that my body knew something wasn't right. So again, kind of going back to your question of like, what would I have done differently? It would have been tuning into my body and listening to that inner wisdom, that intuition, whatever you want to call it, listening to that so much earlier because I could have saved myself some headaches, some burnout, and
Yeah.
some not fun times.
Again, everybody's body is a little bit different, right? But what are some of
Mhm.
the ways that your body started to show you that they're like, it is time?
Yeah. I think there's kind of the, not to get into the like yoga metaphysics, but there's the gross and then the subtle, right?
Right.
So the gross is the like the very tactical, tangible, we can in this case we might call them symptoms. So it's like the achy back, the shoulders, the tight hip flexors, the headaches, the neck aches, the tension.
Yeah.
Those very obvious signs and symptoms that in my case came from literally sitting at my desk for some weeks upwards of 70, 80, maybe even 90 hours a week. So you're going to have those very physical outer symptoms, and I personally think that's a big part of why so many women do kind of go into these body and wellness spaces, because there is that just physical reaction,
Yeah.
and not even just if you're sitting as much as I was, but just the way that the body stores stress. And there's so much science, so much research, so many conversations around this today. But, we know that the body does truly store stress in a very physical way and can
Mhm.
actually change your anatomy. So
Yeah.
I even remember, now like looking back at photos from that period of time, I'm like, my neck was not in alignment with my spine, and my
Yeah.
shoulders were up closer to my ears than they are now. Just some of those, like I said, very physical symptoms.
Yeah. Well, I love some of the work. I don't know if you follow him. It's one of those things, you follow, you kind of watch people online, and I'm like, I don't follow anybody religiously or, take
Yeah, yeah,
everything
yeah.
that they say Bible, but his name is Gary. I can't remember his last name, but he does the Human Garage, and they
Mm,
do all this. It's like fascial work of like
yes.
your network and how it communicates. And I think there's so kind of like you're saying so much research on this interstitium, which is now being called fascia, being this
Mhm.
communicative extension essentially of the nervous system. And when people are like, "Oh, that's not real," I was like, "Really? Have you ever like?" I was like, "Again, if you've ever felt a lot of emotional stress and you felt like you've carried a lot of responsibilities, and all of a sudden you're like, gosh, I feel so tight in my shoulders." Yes,
Mhm.
because that is where responsibility lies. When
Yeah.
I say like things, that's where all these like analogies come from. Like, oh, I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders. I get
Mhm.
butterflies in my stomach, or I'm sick to my
Mhm.
stomach. Like, your body's in this constant communication, and you can't really separate what's going on in the mind from the body. Which again, when we're talking
Mhm.
about these women and these people that are hitting this place in their life where they're like, this doesn't feel good anymore. I think what's starting to happen is that through the body is also where you're experiencing your truth. So when you're so far
Mhm.
removed from it, I think the kind of like you're saying, the way in which you find yourself again is through experiencing things differently in your body.
Mhm.
And so there's that draw
100%.
there. Yeah. And it's so wise.
It is, and I mean, we could go on a super nerdy tangent about, like, the evolution of it, but it's like there is a literal physiological stress response that happens because, way back when 10, 20, 100,000 years ago as early humans, when we encountered a stressor, we had to literally fight it off or run away.
Mhm.
So certain muscles contract, cortisol spikes, you know, the things that you're talking about, like the butterflies in the tummy, the hunched shoulders, like those had very real and necessary functions
Yeah.
from a physiological standpoint. But again, that I know there's, like you said, there's a lot of conversation around that side of things in this space, but
Yeah.
very interesting.
I'm actually curious because we're on the topic of body and like this could apply for like physical, but what are some of the things? Because again, I think the people who are listening to this have either already made the change. Like, I don't have a lot of listeners that are like, let's hustle, let's grind.
Mhm.
Not that, and there's another episode that I did that I actually talk about how like the soft life era is killing your life force.
Mm,
But so if you guys want to go back
mhm.
and listen to that, you can. But I think
Love
the
it.
differentiator is it's not that you're trying to do nothing, have no ambition, have no goals, have no nothing that drives you. That's not the point. The point is to remove all of the things that pushed you into this space of wanting more for yourself. And that's really what that is like, how do I
Mhm.
create a life that I think I should be living? So in that vein, what are some of the behaviors or some of the things that you think looks like ambition, looks like drive on the outside, but on
Mm.
the inside is actually more of like a trauma response or other people's expectations?
Self-abandonment masked as determination or dedication or discipline.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
so
it
good.
kind of funny, but, like, the very first thing that comes to mind is, like, the 12-step morning wellness routine.
Yeah,
I think we've almost gone so far in wellness culture that
hmm,
wellness has become a hustle culture in and
oh,
of itself,
a
and
hundred
it's
percent.
and it's become, like, for the aesthetic of it
Yeah,
versus for how it actually makes me feel. So I'm talking about and not any one of these things in isolation, but it's the stacking of like every morning I wake up at 5, I meditate, I do my HIIT workout, I do my red light therapy, I hop in the sauna, I do a cold plunge, I take my aminos,
I'm
I
like,
and
you
it
know the stuff you're talking
and
about. Yeah,
right. You know, talk about overachievement.
yeah, yeah.
You know, I kind of like to say if you don't have the basics of like eating well, getting good sleep, and moving your body, no amount of red light therapy and aminos is
No.
going to help you whatsoever.
Well, and that's what I get. Yeah, totally. Like people come to me and they're like, well, what would you recommend? And I'm like, tell me about your sleep.
Yeah, love it.
Tell me about the stress in your life. Do you have a job you hate? Do you like the person that you're married to? Do
Yeah.
you hate that you have to share, that you have to live with your in-laws? Or is that okay for
Mhm.
you? Like those things and the way that you respond to those matter way more. And I think again, I'm like, well, you don't need to take stuff. You need to fucking clean up your life. You need to clog
Mhm.
the holes that is letting all of your energy leak out. You need to stop letting these
100%.
things pull from you.
100%.
Like,
So I don't know. That's the first one that comes to mind. I mean, I think kind of in that same vein, though, anything that is ambition for the sake of aesthetics, where it's taking on a million clients just so you can post the client testimonials on Instagram or just sharing every little bit and piece about your life on Instagram. That's another one, I think. Yeah, I think just like being really mindful of, am I truly pursuing this, whatever this is, because it makes me feel fulfilled versus it makes me look successful,
yeah.
because those are 2 very different things. You can
Yeah.
be very successful, you can look very successful, and you can still hate your life.
Well, look at all these like celebrities that commit suicide. They have all the money, they have influence, they have all these,
100%.
yes, they have
So
things that you would think, or even people that talk about how depressed they are, even though they're wildly successful, like influencers or marketers or, people that are very much in the public eye. And yeah, I think about that so many times, especially when people in different circumstance give me, I always say, like, I never take business advice from men, and not because they're not wonderful business people. I think they can be, but they have not been a single mom of 2 children on one income. They will never understand what that is like or what that experience was like for me when I was building my first business. So why the
mhm,
fuck would I take advice from a bro marketer who's 23 years old and is a millionaire, and that's phenomenal, but
mhm,
your life doesn't apply to my life? And I think
mhm,
that's what we see right here is like we're talking about is all these people that are trying to build a life that looks like somebody else's and think that it's going to feel the same for them. And it doesn't.
Yeah, trying to build a life that looks good on paper or looks good on Instagram rather than actually feels good as they're living it.
Yeah. Well, and so then if that's the case, then what if burnout is more of the messenger, right? It's trying to send you signals
Mm-hmm.
through the body, through the mind, all those things. What do you think it's trying to actually tell us?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is something is out of alignment. If you go back to the stress response, there there's that evolutionary reason why we hunch our shoulders, we engage our pelvic floor, we feel the heart rate rise, the face flush, all of those things. It's because there's an acute stressor that we
Yeah.
need to deal with.
Yeah.
And if we don't deal with the stressor, then those contracted muscles aren't made use of. The cortisol is not metabolized, et cetera, and you just start to store and start to accumulate this stress in your body. And so I think the first thing is it's telling you that something needs to change. So when I say something's out of alignment, something needs to change because your body is having this chronic stress response that it's stuck in, that it can't complete the cycle, so to
Yeah.
speak. You're never going to be able to, drop a roundhouse kick to your boss who schedules a meeting at 5 p.m. on a Friday and then just feel better about it. Like,
Yeah.
like you might arrive a tribe that's after your food.
Yeah.
It doesn't quite work that way. Or I mean, you could try, but your results may vary. But yeah, I think it's, first and foremost, it's this signal that the body is not okay with what is happening in life, in circumstance. And that could be because the stress itself truly is just too much.
Yeah.
But you can have that same stress response when you're not living in alignment with values. It doesn't have to be just because your schedule is too full, you have too
Yeah.
many responsibilities, you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders, but just simply because you're living out your day-to-day life in a way that there's some sort of disconnect with what your, again, intuition, inner knowing, what your higher self knows to be your truth, that causes stress too. And your body can't differentiate a tiger versus your boss scheduling last minute meetings constantly versus having too much on your plate versus living out of alignment. The results in your physical body are the same.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I just recorded my You Are the Medicine membership has like all these different symptoms, and one of them is pain. And so I just recorded these like natural remedies that you can do for pain, but also like where they come from. And I was talking about some of this because we talk about some of the biochemistry and stuff like that in there. But I was talking about how the circuitry of pain in the brain is the same for both physical and emotional. The brain doesn't
Exactly.
differentiate
That's
the
exactly
two.
it.
And people don't realize that. People do not understand that. It's just that we haven't been taught. We're not educated. But I love something I think that's unique about you is you talked a lot about the path of finding fulfillment, of finding these things, just like you were talking about through the body. That sometimes
Mhm.
it's not job, which is I think such a focus of
Mhm.
like your job created this, the business that you've created this. And it's like, no, no,
100%.
no. You created a business that was not in alignment with what felt true or honest for what you actually
Right.
wanted. So then have you seen what's your kind of experience like in working with people that when they're like, I can't leave my job. I'm the breadwinner.
Mm.
I can't leave my job. I don't have something lined up, but I know something needs to change. What would be the thing that you're like, let's start here? And what are some of the like other contributing factors that you're kind of going through and looking for that some of the listeners could be like, hey, maybe I need to look at that if I'm feeling this way?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the things that you mentioned earlier of like, how are you in your marriage? How are you in your home? How are you in your friendships? Like all of those kind of going through almost a little mini life audit of in what ways am I showing up that is in alignment? In what ways am I not? Because sometimes it is the job. Other times it's not the job. It's that, I'm in with this really toxic group of girlfriends, or I have this doom scrolling addiction, or X, Y, and Z, like whatever it is, it doesn't have to always be the job. So I think that's the first layer of do do the life audit, go through, what does your daily life look like? What does your week look like? What does a month look like? And where are those periods where you're feeling a sense of constriction in your throat, or the butterflies in your stomach, or the drop in your stomach, the heart
Yeah.
rate increase is just starting to pay attention to what are those, I hate using the word trigger, but like what are the triggers? What activates you
Right.
as you move through your life? Because it might not be the job. It might not be the amount of work. It could be
Mm.
the specific nature of work. So I think that's go ahead.
No, no, no. Um, I was just
What
gonna
was
say
the question?
it's like one of those things. It's like it's looking at how you're relating to things.
Yes.
Because if it bothers you that your boss is inconsiderate of your time, is it because you often feel like Fridays are like, that's my time now? What, like, did
Mhm.
you often feel like when it was stuff for you, like that also happened in childhood? Like nobody was considerate of the things that you wanted to do? Like, where did that, because some people that doesn't bother. And that's, I think, something that I keep in mind when talking to clients is it's like, understanding that this bothers you, but this doesn't bother everybody. So where is that coming
Exactly. And yes, and I think that's exactly it. So, once you've done kind of that life audit of like, where am I actually feeling activated? Then there's an exercise that I used to do when I was moderating focus groups in the marketing world that's called the 5 whys. That you ask why, and then you ask why 5 more times. And then that gets to the crux of the quote unquote issue. So, like you said, okay, why does it bother me that my boss schedules meetings at 5 p.m.? Because he doesn't respect my time. Why does it bother you that he doesn't respect your time? When I was a child, yada, yada, yada. And you keep going down that path and keep peeling back those layers to get at that underlying source of frustration. And then a lot of times it's from that then you find the underlying value that you hold to be true, which, in the case of time, maybe it's that the underlying value is freedom. You
Yeah.
feel like you're not getting the freedom of time that you feel that you're owed because 5 p.m. starts the weekend. Or maybe the underlying value is family and work is cutting into your family time. And so then once you know that value, that gives you a bit of direction on how to course correct, even if you have to remain within the parameters of your current circumstances. Like you said, if you're the primary breadwinner and you can't leave your job, but now you understand that you have this value of family or value of freedom, well, can you go back to the boss and talk about a boundary or a way to work that in so that you are living in alignment with that value
Yeah.
while still upholding your financial obligations?
Yeah.
And I think where a lot of people get hung up is, well, my boss would never go for, X, Y, and Z boundary. Well, wouldn't they? Have you asked?
The worst they
Maybe.
can say is no.
Maybe they will say no,
Yeah.
but maybe they'll say yes. And I think there's also something to be said of like, we do always have a choice. Even if you think you can't quit your job because you're the primary breadwinner, you absolutely can quit your job. Now, you might not like the consequences that come with that.
Yeah.
And then you go back to that value of freedom or that value of family and say, okay, I can quit my job, but if I quit my job, that takes away now my financial freedom, and I valued freedom. So I'm going to choose to remain in this job, understanding that it comes at some compromises. Every choice we make in life comes with some compromises. A yes to anything is a no to something else.
100%.
That's just how it works.
Well,
But you can go into that or stay in that same circumstance with a different perspective that is, okay, now I can see how this circumstance is actually supporting my core values, even if maybe it's not 100% perfect. I can see how it is supporting what I hold to be true as a core value of family, of freedom, of success, whatever that may be, while then I'm looking for something else.
and I saw something the other day, and I talked about this a lot, that like indecision and staying, kind of like you were saying at the beginning, you're like, oh, I wish I would have listened sooner. I wish I would have made a decision and made changes sooner. People don't realize that often indecision, doing nothing, is also choosing exactly what you have.
Indecision is a decision.
Yes, it's choosing to say yes to your current experience instead of yes to
Yeah.
something else that you want more. So
Mhm.
it's not that you're being indecisive. You are choosing, but you're choosing to stay the same, which is not,
Mhm.
again, that's not like coming down on those people who like don't leave their job. It's like nothing like that. But
No.
sometimes we hide behind this victim. And I think that's because challenging the boss, asking for the thing, making changes in your life is difficult. It is hard.
It's scary.
Yes.
The nervous system doesn't like change.
No. And when you look at, again, it's like anything else. You're like, I want a body that is healthy and that can move well, that's at a healthy weight, because we know a healthy weight also correlates with lower risk of heart disease, lower risk of all sorts of other disorders and conditions. Okay, in order to do that, I need to regularly move. That means I'm going to have to make a choice to do something different. If I'm not exercising, if I'm not moving, if I'm not looking at any of these patterns, I'm choosing the life that I currently have that is making me unhappy.
And yes, exactly. And I think it's that choice and the empowerment to make that choice, that even if the choice you make is not to change, it can make a difference.
Yes.
Because to say I am stuck in this job that I hate feels very different than I am choosing to stay in this job, as imperfect as it may be, because it allows me to support my family.
Yes. And sometimes saying those things out loud, you start to realize, oh, my truth is not that I hate my job. My truth is that I'm staying here, even though it's not exactly what I want, because I value something else more.
Exactly.
And sometimes people just need the perspective shift and like the zoom out. Again, not to say that burnout isn't very real and that, you're not experiencing that, but it gives you that grace period or that wiggle room of, instead of things feeling so immediate, I need to change everything now, everything is bad. I'm consumed by my burnout because I feel like right now, and again, this is like the same thing of like the words of like trauma and triggered and burnout. People love a good fucking label. And I feel like because that label is everywhere right now, they feel like they belong somewhere. They feel like there's a clan of us together in burnout. And great. Well, great. What are you going to do about it? We can't all sit and burn out together and complain because, again, that means we're choosing the same thing. And it's like that, not allowing that misery or that unhappiness to become your identity, that you can't see that part of the reason that you're there is because you value something else more. You know what I mean? You're like,
Exactly. And that's why you have to do the work of getting to the underlying value.
yeah,
Because otherwise, it isn't a choice. Like you said, it's just, I'm going to sit here and stay stuck because, going back to my example, well, that was the script I was handed.
yeah,
Well, that's a very disempowering place to be.
yeah. I love that you talked about like the whys. There's some videos of Gabor Mate doing, and again, he does all this like psychosomatic work of like, body and mind connection. But somebody is interviewing him and the guy's talking about how he's so pissed at this contractor because this roof wasn't done well or whatever. And he's like, well, why did that bother you? And so he's asking all of these why questions. And he actually went even further than values and went to basic needs. And every single thing that he whittled down to, like, your basic needs are to feel loved, to feel seen, to feel heard, and to feel valued. And anytime you're upset, when you whittle everything down, it comes down to one of those four. You know, he was like, well,
Mhm.
I felt disrespected. And he's like, why did you feel that way? He did the best that he could. It's just not what you thought he should do. And he's like, well, and they talked about, missed like communication as far as expectations. And he's like, but did you, like, and so as he like kept drawing it down, it was to like basic needs. And that's the thing is when we feel this way, it's this basic need and kind of going back to that body trying to incur some kind of response or some kind of change because what you're doing isn't working. So
Mm.
sometimes, again, even coming to the conclusion that you're choosing this, that is a shift.
That is a shift. It's a mindset change,
Yes.
but it is a change.
Yes. I think that's really important to talk about because there are a lot of people who are in that space where they feel so just torn down by the years of being in the same job or the years of like giving so much of their life and not feeling appreciated, not feeling like they're properly compensated. Now they have health conditions because the amount of stress that they've been in for so many years
Mhm.
and their job doesn't give them time off for this health condition that they incurred because of the job.
Mhm.
And so, but they're also like, I can't leave right this second. And that feels like that's also friction. That's also stress. So even like doing work with like Maggie, where you're like working through that transition, sometimes you need to have these shifts in perspective, kind of like you're saying, to be able to have that time to make the physical changes. Sometimes they have to start in the mind first.
Yeah, they really do. I mean, our mind creates our reality at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah.
And whether that means that our perception creates how we experience the world, regardless of whether the experience itself actually changes, or that can also mean, we have to do the mindset work to even get to a place where we feel we can make the physical experience change, like you said.
Yeah.
Because I mean, in my case, I had been in this position for 10 years. I had started to realize something wasn't quite right about 4 to 5 in. I really realized this wasn't it about 8 to 9 in, and it still took me a full year before I actually made that physical change. And of course, I recognize I slash am in a very privileged position where I could make that change immediately. I
Yeah.
still didn't.
Yeah. Because again, you like hold on to that identity too. Who am I if I don't have all of these things that's leading to me feeling unfulfilled, to feeling like there's no purpose, to literally hating to get up in the morning and go to work or do this job? What do you think, honestly, like, what do you think is the difference? Because I think there's a difference between the people who are not taking care of themselves physically and they're tired and they're feeling like they hate their job versus the people that this actually like their soul is asking to make changes. What do you think is the biggest difference between these two people and like how do you know if you're one versus the other?
Such a good question. So the people who are they're not physically taking care of their body and that is causing them dissatisfaction. Is that kind of what you're getting at
Yeah,
versus the person who
well,
it's like there is something truly deeper that is at play?
yeah. Well, yeah, because I personally I feel like when people are really unsatisfied with their job at the moment, but they love what they're doing, that's usually because
Mhm.
they're not meeting their own needs physically. Like they still love
Yeah,
what
I
they do,
think
but they're like regretting getting up. You know what I
I see
mean?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, it's almost it's almost like a temporary depression versus
Yeah.
actual burnout almost. Yeah, I think that's where just going through I keep using the word life audit, but I think that's where that becomes so important of just starting the practice of noticing what are the things that I do that when I'm doing them I actually feel good versus the things that I do that make me feel not so good or maybe looking back on okay, well, I was happy and feeling good 3 months ago. What was I doing then versus what am I doing now? And that's where you might start to see some of those patterns of, okay, well, 3 months ago, I had this really consistent workout practice and a workout routine, yoga practice. I was doing a weekly date night with my partner. I was going to book club. And now all of a sudden, and maybe I'm working on a really big project that has me working later into the evening and is cutting into the time that I and was spending taking care of my body, taking care of my mind, taking care of my meeting my community needs and my relationship needs. And, in those cases, it's again just kind of looking at your life objectively. We talk about in the yoga space, like witness consciousness, being like a third party observer almost. You're just looking at your life really objectively. And is there a path towards bringing those things back into the fold? Great. If so, do so. Is this big project almost over? All right. Well, now you know the things that were helping you to feel good. Can you bring those back into your life in some small way until the time commitment of this large project wraps, and then start to rebuild that habit after the fact, versus the people who there's something that it's just the soul is not happy with the circumstance. I think that's where it's almost the opposite situation, where you can be doing all of the things that make you feel good, yet something still feels missing or feels misaligned. And it's just that lingering and prolonged feeling of this is not right that I think can be a signal to help you differentiate kind of which camp you fall into.
Yeah. And I think, again, I think sometimes that's not to say a misconception, but I think people are using even the term burnout. And what they
Mhm.
really mean is I haven't been meeting my own needs.
Yeah.
I'm not burnt out. I'm not taking care of myself. I haven't made the
Right.
space for that. Other
Yeah,
things.
and it's like, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to
No,
cut you
I
off.
just said you've made other things more important, which is okay. I
Yeah.
think it comes in different seasons. When you're a new parent, your needs are less important. Like
Right.
you can
You're
go to
keeping a little human alive.
yeah, you can feed yourself, the bathroom by yourself. You can do all those things by yourself.
Right.
This little thing cannot. So your
Right.
needs do take a second to them. But I think where the shift changes for a lot of people is that and this is something that I think I see in society, is that it's really glorified to be selfless. But really what
Mm,
they mean by selfless is they mean to, like you said earlier, to self-abandon, to never take care of yourself. And that's honorable. And I think again, when we start to whittle down some of these things, that why we're doing what we're doing, what got us to this point,
mhm.
it's at what point did you learn that it was safer and it was better for you to make sure that everybody else was taken care of and to neglect yourself?
Yeah.
So it's like working through a lot of those. It's like deep shit. And that's where I don't think people don't realize it's like the same thing as like, they're like, oh, I'm unhappy. I'm going to get a divorce. I'll just find a new partner. And it's like the person's been married 5 times and it's maybe you're the problem. Maybe it's
Like
not the
notice the
job.
pattern.
Yeah. Maybe it's not the job. Maybe it's not the person. Maybe it's you.
What is the common denominator?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. What's something that you think that, I mean, besides obviously like self-abandonment, which we kind of talked about, but what's something else that you think society has glorified that has led to burnout, or like that being more common these days?
Hustle culture, 100%. I think just, and maybe this is kind of like self-abandonment because you almost have to self-abandon to buy into the hustle, but I do think they're different because, like you said, I think there's the element of self-abandonment where it's trendy to be selfless. I think it's also trendy to hustle, it's almost like burnout is a badge of honor these days,
Yeah.
where to have the schedule that is completely booked with meetings and obligations and what have you from 6 in the morning to 8 at night. And to, I mean, this is going to be divisive to say this, but the coaches who share how much they made in a month. Here's how I got to $10,000 months, $20,000 months, $30,000
Yeah.
months. That kind of perpetuates the cycle of, again, that's more about the aesthetic
Yeah.
necessarily than the fulfillment. And I understand why people do it. I really do.
Yeah, it's a great marketing tool.
It's a
It
great
shows
marketing tactic.
yeah.
I started working as a coach right out of corporate to try to build a yoga business because of one of those claims.
Yes.
And funny enough, it was in that coaching program that I was probably more dysregulated than I ever was when I was
Mm.
actually in the thick of corporate burnout. Because now it was hustle masked as
Entrepreneurship.
living my soul's
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I have a huge ick, to be honest, with like the coaching and the business coaching industry. One, I feel like it's really fascinating. So I've been offering business coaching not because I wanted to offer business coaching, because people came to me and they're like, "You've built a really successful business. You're
Mhm.
making a lot of money. Can you show me how to do it?" However, most business coaches now have never built a successful business but are business coaching. And so
Yeah.
what they're doing is being like, "Throw all this stuff at the wall. These are all of these things that you could do." And I was like, the
There are all
reality,
of these buzzwords.
yes. And I was like, that's not a business mentor. If you can't break down your revenue streams, if and where the holes are, if you can't find the holes as the fucking coach, it's because you never actually run a business. You've never built something beyond coaching business to other businesses.
Mhm.
That's an MLM.
I was literally just going to say it's giving MLM. It's
Yes.
giving MLM so hard.
Yes. And
Yeah, that but
yeah.
I do think that that is something right now that kind of falls into that camp of like
Yes.
it's trendy. It's we're glorifying it
Well,
and
and
it's
I
it's creating a problem to solve a problem.
100%. And I think again, kind of in this, what we're seeing as a lot of people experiencing burnout. And then what's happening is this culture of people that are like, well, you can create something on your own. And there's all those memes out there that are like, why work for somebody else for 40 hours a week when I work and work for myself for 100? So
Yeah.
I'm like, here's the deal. I was like, as somebody who has been self-employed for 15 years, the reality is, if you value freedom of time, entrepreneurship is great. You can work, yes, whenever you want, so to speak.
Quote unquote, but
However,
that also means you're never not working.
yes, both my husband and I are entrepreneurs and have been pretty much our whole adult lives, and have, between the two of us, owned several businesses. And well, actually, we've each owned several businesses separately because we don't own any together. But the reality is when we go on vacation, we don't, you guys, the meetings at 5 o'clock, like, it's not that we don't go on vacation and don't enjoy ourselves and turn things off. We do. But it is not at the level of the person who can turn off at 5 o'clock.
Right. You can truly clock out,
Yes.
cash in on the PTO,
Yes.
set it out of office, have
Don't
coverage.
fucking bother me. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And
so, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think that's one of them for sure. And then I kind of get the same vibes from the trad wife trend, where there's an element of
Yeah, it's a lot of work to be a trad wife. I don't know.
it is a lot of work to be a trad wife. And it's okay, you can throw in the towel on the corporate burnout or the entrepreneurship burnout and go this other route. And the Instagram aesthetic of it is, super fun and fanciful and baking sourdough bread and singing nursery rhymes. But again, that is a choice that
You're trading one type of work
you are
for another.
you are trading one type of work for another.
And this is
100%.
when we were talking about earlier, when we're like, you need to find your values.
Exactly.
This is why. Because it's again, you're just going to go from thing to thing to thing. If you're experiencing burnout in your job, why? What is out of alignment? Which is really what Maggie helps people with, and helps people understand and kind of navigate those things. Because, and it's not just, hey, you should leave your job and now come build a business with me. You know what I mean? Again, so I would love to hear a little bit about your process, because you do have a Telegram community that's coming out soon, which is really exciting. Basically, we've talked about this, it's been talked about by so many people. which means it's happening a lot. And you need to have a community where you can have conversations like these that are open and honest. And honestly, like what we talked about, like getting back to what are your fucking values? It's not about the job,
Yeah.
and so Maggie's a community where you can really have those conversations, help you make some of those decisions, things like that. So I want to hear a little bit more about some of your process and when people like work with you and stuff like that, like what's the experience like? How are they working through it? Like, how do you see things?
Yeah, I kind of see a three-phase process, if you will. So, first, you have to reconnect. And we've talked a lot about the body in this conversation, but you truly have to reconnect with the body and to start noticing what I was saying before of when does the body have a stress response? When do you feel light and grounded? Because that's data too. When do you find yourself physically numbing out? And just starting to put on the lens of awareness. And then within that, starting to trust your body as messenger. I love how you use the word messenger as, burnout is it is a messenger. All of this information that we're getting by way of those grosser symptoms of the very tactical, the very tangible symptoms like the achy back, all of that, down to the more subtle of that little feeling of constriction, that little bubbling up of heat, that little feeling of expansion or lightness. Starting to tune into that wisdom, to reconnect with that wisdom. And then from there, revealing the underlying values and getting into mission and vision work. I know a lot of times we think about mission and vision as things that brands do. Coca-Cola has a mission and a vision, Patagonia has a mission and a vision, but what is your personal mission? What are you here on this planet to do? What is your ideal life? And going through some exercises that kind of get into the subconscious of that so that it rapidly answering without tapping into the thinking mind, but letting the intuition, letting that inner self speak, so to speak.
Mhm.
And then from there, I like to use the word reclaiming authorship. So if you think of your life as your body of work, your story that you're creating, taking back the pen and building confidence to actually go out and do the things that will make you feel fulfilled. And in some cases, that might mean resume writing and career support. In some cases, that might mean business coaching. In some cases, that might just be, like we said, the mindset work of change doesn't always have to be external. It can be the perspective shift.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the three-phase process, if you will, of reconnect, reveal, and reclaim. So then within the community, it's going to be a lot in the first couple of phases of just starting to notice the stories that we're all collectively living by, that women as individuals are living by, and calling each other out on that stuff when we see it, because I think that is so healthy and so productive to have a supportive group of women who will say, "Hey, this is a little out of alignment from what I know about you or
Yeah.
what you have said you want." And even just kind of sharing in the camaraderie of no matter which way you cut it, boss babe in corporate world, the entrepreneurship hustle, the trad life, the trad wife, stay-at-home mom life, like it's work
Yeah.
regardless of what you choose, but how can you choose in a way that is authentic to you? And so really just being there for those conversations and sharing in that support, having camaraderie, that's the focus of the community, because then some of those later steps of like what are the actual action planning? What's the actual action steps that need to be taken? That's very individual,
Yeah.
but yeah, I can support that as well. Yeah, super excited for the community.
Yeah. Well, and again, I see a lot of people advertising burnout and then being like, do this with your life instead. And I love that you're saying it's all work.
It's all work.
Work.
it's all work and it all can be a path towards burnout.
Yes. I recognized pretty early on that like when I stayed home with my kids, I don't think I could be I'm sure if I had to, I would. But I didn't enjoy being home all of the time. I enjoyed my kids. I enjoy spending a lot of time with my kids. That's part of the reason I created my own business, was so that I could have the time freedom to be able to go to all the school functions, to pick up from school, so that they didn't have to go to an after like that was a priority for me and again a value for me. But I felt like I really lost myself, and it was hard for me to stay connected to who I was, to feel like the best version of myself when I was staying at home. When I had these, I think I stayed, my daughter was, I think, 8 weeks before I went back to work again. And then my son, I was nannying right after he was born. So I was able to technically stay home. I was watching other kids as well. But when I looked at who I was a great mom, but I wasn't the best internally. I knew I wasn't the best for myself. And I think people need to understand that just because you're feeling a lot at work, just because you're kind of getting to that point, again, whether it's staying at home, whether it's at work, whether it's whatever, that threshold of wanting to change something is trying to tell you that something is out of alignment with your values, with who you are, with your truth. And what you're offering and the community that you're trying to build is saying like, hey, let's all find our truth. Let's be seekers of what's true for us. And that doesn't have to be the same for everybody. And we're not trying to replace one grind with another.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do, because I feel like right now communities are so siloed. You have the stay-at-home mom Facebook group. You have the women in leadership in corporate support, networking group. You have the business entrepreneurship masterminds and those community groups. But I think there's something so valuable of having everyone in the room together, because there is something so freeing about realizing no matter which way you cut it, no matter which path you choose, it's going to be work. So choose the one that most aligns with you.
Yeah. And sometimes, again, that means it doesn't always mean leaving your job.
100%. And that might be the path that you're already on.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just working with somebody to help you process things from your past, to help you do some of these things, getting you some of the help that you need to be able to change the way that your mind, your body is, acquainted to that experience, like being able to change that perspective and the way that your body is perceiving it can be what you need. That can resolve some of the issues.
Yeah, 100%.
It doesn't always have to upend your life.
Yeah, you don't have to blow up your life to to find happiness.
Exactly.
You might.
Yeah,
but you don't have to.
But not always.
Not always.
I think so much of that comes with, again, getting curious about who you are, what you value, all of the things that you're working through with people. So I think that's such a valuable thing that you're bringing. I'm really grateful that you're doing it and you're bringing it here and we're talking about it. And again, having a conversation of not, I don't know. We talked about this off air before we started, and I was like, I don't want to have another burnout conversation. Everybody's talking about it. Let's talk about it, and there's so much more nuance to it. Let's talk about those things. So I'm glad we got to talk a lot more about not just being quote unquote out of alignment, but what drives those things, and not just upending your life. And all of those things are so important when you're feeling this way, and to feel supported by other people. So if you haven't already found Maggie on Instagram, please go check her out, Maggie Ledbetter. And there'll also be a link in the show notes for you to be able to get on a wait list for when her Telegram opens. If you feel any of the things that we're talking about, and you're like, because it's almost kind of like you said, silos. It's like the entrepreneur, the stay-at-home mom, whatever. And nobody talks about the in-between, like what's in between the silos. Like that's where Maggie is there to help you, is like when you're transitioning, when you're trying to make some of these decisions, when you're processing stuff, choose that support for you. So you can go ahead and click the link below to check that out, to get on the wait list. But I always like to ask one question at the end of every podcast, you're in an elevator and you're only going up one floor. So you probably only have about 30 seconds to spitball to somebody what you think the secret to life, to happiness, to living a fulfilling life, since we're on that topic, is. What would you tell them?
I think I would say to do what truly makes you happy if no one was watching. So what would you do if it wasn't going to be reported for Instagram, if it wasn't going to be put on a resume, if it wasn't going to necessarily even have to pay your bills? Pursue that. If you can't pursue it as a career, pursue it as a hobby.
Yeah. I love that. I was thinking the other day, I was like, I should make all of these like little like 2 to 3 sentences or like one-liners at the end of every episode and just make an episode where it's like rapid fire secrets.
Oh, I
Bam,
love
bam,
that
bam, bam,
idea.
bam. Yeah. Maybe that'll be coming. I just thought about it like yesterday and I was like, oh, maybe I should do that. That would be fun. Because there's so many great snippets. And I feel like, again, it's like all of these things that are little, they're not hard, they're not complicated for you to live a more fulfilling, happy, to literally become the frequency and live the frequency that you want to create for yourself, you know? So thank you so much, Maggie, for being here. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Shalane.
All
Lovely
right.
to chat with you.
Yeah, you too. Cheers, everybody.